But yeah, anyway, we are going to be, because of this development, we are actually going to be talking about Jeff Kent and his Hall of Fame case, for and against his Hall of Fame case. I think it's pretty notable because he did get over a quarter of the votes last year.
This is definitely the most like tenured guy that we've talked about so far in these bubble cases.
Yes, that is true. We haven't had anyone with more than 3 ballots thus far, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I think Todd Helton had
Oh,
been
Andrew
on.
Jones is at 4.
Okay, yeah, Andrew Jones is at 4. Jeff Kent has been on 7 ballots. In his first year, he started at 15.2%, which I guess maybe would be optimistic, but it's kind of been a slow rise for him. He's at 27.5% on his latest ballot in 2020. And so far in 2021, there's actually been a drop. He only has 17.3% of the vote on released ballots so far. I believe there's 52 or something like that.
53. Another
Yes.
one recently went in.
Yeah, a little over 50 ballots out of probably 400 that will be submitted.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's running out of time a little bit. And in all likelihood, if we had to predict, he will probably end up maxing out on ballots.
I would guess that. I mean, Larry Walker didn't start his surge until year 8, and that's what Jeff Kent is currently in. Because after year 7, it could have been very easy to infer that Larry Walker would max out on ballots, and he just barely, made it in by the skin of his teeth. Jeff Kent, it's not looking very strong, but we will go over why he should or should not be in.
Yeah. So we're taking a look at his on the surface stats, just the regular old things you find on his baseball reference page and his Fangraphs page, every stat you want to know about Jeff Kent. So he has a 55.4 baseball reference WAR and a 56.0 FWAR. The average Hall of Fame second baseman is around 69, 70 baseball reference WAR, average Hall of Fame second baseman. He also has a 35.8 peak WAR, which is your best 7 seasons of wins above replacement added up. His is 35.8. That is 8.6 below the average Hall of Fame second baseman. Also, his career quadruple slash line is 290, 356, 500, 855. And his OPS plus and weighted runs created plus are both 123. And that was all done in 9,537 career plate appearances. And in terms of count statistics, somewhat impressive stuff there. 377 home runs, 560 doubles, which are 30th all time, 1,518 RBI, 2,461 hits, and 801 walks. And in terms of defense, kind of found it notable because he is pretty much a perfectly average defender. He has 1.2 defensive runs above average and negative zero point 0.1 D-WAR. So, and also no gold gloves for him. And yeah, he was pretty much perfectly average for his position.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a 4-time Silver Slugger Award winner. And he won the MVP in the year of 2000. And in the playoffs, because I know that sometimes players' resumes can be added or subtracted from the playoffs. It's kind of neutral with Jeff Kent. He hit 276 with an 840 OPS in 189 plate appearances in the postseason. So anything of note, just looking at the on the surface stuff here.
I think Jeff Kent would be a good signal as to how much defense contributes to wins above replacement because one guy who I look to as a very similar type of player to Jeff Kent, we were talking about this before we went on, Chris, was Chase Utley. If you look at the offensive statistics, very, very similar career-wise, but Chase Utley had the defense that Jeff Kent didn't really have. He was, you said he was perfectly average. Chase Utley has I think 7 or 8 more wins above replacement on Baseball Reference. So I really do think that kind of shows the difference that defense can make.
Yeah, and you look at I think a lot of Hall of Fame second basemen do benefit from their defense. I know this is like a very old name, but like Charlie Gehringer is a
Yeah.
guy. He had a 125 career OPS plus, but his B WAR was over 80. I think he was a very good defender, and like a guy we talked about before recording, who didn't make the Hall of Fame and like has the Hall of Fame numbers though, in terms of wins above replacement, is like Lou Whitaker,
Mm-hmm.
who had worse offensive statistics than Jeff Kent, but more wins above replacement because of his contributions on defense, and I think he had some good contributions on the bases as well. But yeah, it's that is a good point because you know if you're gonna have like if he had that like Gold Glove presence, maybe won a few of those awards, he would have had a stronger case. But he's lying around in the mid 50s for B WAR and F WAR, which are a little off the mark. But we will get into some comparisons in guys that compare to Jeff Kent and whether they are not, or whether they are in the Hall of Fame. So his Jeff Kent's B WAR is 55.4, so kind of surrounded that for some filters. So here is a list of players with 53 to 58 baseball reference WAR in 8,500 to 10,500 plate appearances, as Jeff Kent had 9,537 plate appearances. So there's Joe Torre, who is not a Hall of Famer as a player, got in as a manager though. Willie Stargell, who's a Hall of Famer. Enos Slaughter, who's a Veterans Era Hall of Fame inductee. Billy Herman, who is also a Veterans Era Hall of Fame inductee. David Ortiz, who's a likely Hall of Famer. Stan Hack, who was a 7th ballot drop. Jose Cruz, who is a 1st ballot drop. Willie Keeler, who is a Dead Ball Era Hall of Famer. Veda Pinson, who maxed out on ballots. George Sisler, who's a Hall of Famer. Sam Rice, who's a Hall of Famer. Harry Hooper, who is a Hall of Famer. And Bert Campaneris, who was a 1st ballot drop. So kind of an interesting mix of
A
players.
diverse cast of characters for sure.
Yeah, very diverse. You have your I guess your dead ball guys, and you got David Ortiz, who's one of the biggest baseball names out there. But
yeah, Willie Stargell.
Yeah, Willie Stargell. But it does show you how much more offense is valued, even if you have a somewhat subpar wins above replacement for a player in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, that's kind of in terms of wins above replacement, that's the crew he's kind of rolling with. It's kind of mostly Hall of Famers, surprisingly enough.
It is.
Yeah. From all different kinds of eras. So now just looking at his offense, and I really specified this because I was originally going to do players with a 120 to 125 OPS plus in the amount of plate appearances, general amount of plate appearances, but there were 20 guys on that list. So I bunched it down a little bit. So here's a list of players with a 122 to 124 OPS plus in 8,500 to 10,500 plate appearances. So there's Scott Rowland, who's on the ballot, but we're definitely going to make the case. We're leaning more towards him because of his defense. He was like an 8-time Gold Glover or something like that. There's Tim Raines, who is a Hall of Famer. He had
10th ballot.
10th ballot Hall of Famer.
That's correct.
And he had 808 career stolen bases. So he contributed more beyond the OPS plus. Ernie Banks, who is a Hall of Famer, member of the 500 Home Run Club. Enos Slaughter, who we went over, Veterans Era Hall of Fame inductee. Brian Downing, who is a 1st ballot drop. Ed Konechi, who didn't make the ballot. Jimmy Ryan, who didn't make the ballot. And George Van Hultren, who got 1.3% of the vote in 1936.
He was up against some tough competition though.
He was, but he didn't get called back to any Veterans Era committees. So, but that's who he's rolling with. But
I think these lists kind of confirm what I said earlier about how much defense contributes. Because you look at the names, that share his baseball reference WAR over that time span of plate appearances. David Ortiz is obviously a big name, but we know that he didn't play defense because he was a designated hitter. Other than that, Willie Stargell is probably the only like well-known name. I guess George Sisler as well, just because he's a Hall of Famer. But I mean, maybe that's just because I know him. But regardless, I think it kind of goes without saying that the names that share his OPS plus are much more eye-popping. Guys like Scott Rowland, guys like Tim Raines, especially guys like Ernie Banks, who's recognized. He's literally Mr. Cub. I mean, the face of one of the most prestigious franchises ever. So yeah, I mean, Jeff Kent, his offense was certainly there for a large portion of his career, especially at a not powerful position, I guess. But yeah, the defense is certainly concerning.
All right. So do you want to do the case against him or for him?
I'll do the case against him.
All right.
I haven't voted for Kent in the past. I've definitely thrown his name around. I feel like I would give him a chance if I had more options because he's always like, for me, he's always been like the 10th, like the 11th or 12th guy that I'd consider. But with that being said, a Hall of Fame career with a player with 55.4 B WAR and 56 F WAR, that's kind of baseline. So it requires a solid peak. And Kent didn't really have that. He sort of just backed his way into those numbers almost like. And he only had 3 5+ win seasons according to Baseball Reference WAR, and only 2 6+ win seasons. And that's 5 win seasons according to F WAR. My bad. And he only had 6 4-win seasons according to F WAR, and only 5 4-win seasons according to Baseball Reference WAR. So he wasn't great for a long period of time. And he only eclipsed an OPS plus of 140 or higher 3 times and OPS plus of 130 or higher 5 times. Normally, that's like you're doing that all 7 years of your peak. He was not. He finished top 10 in position player B WAR in the league only twice. He finished top 10 in position player F WAR only twice. And he finished top 10 in OPS and OPS plus only once.
Yeah. So those are some glaring numbers. I'm going to make the case for Jeff Kent, or what the case would be for someone arguing for Jeff Kent. You could argue that he's not very far off from the average Hall of Fame second baseman, and maybe he could be a baseline Hall of Fame second baseman, which I would imagine there are worse second basemen in the Hall of Fame out there.
Definitely like dead ball guys.
Yeah, we don't really love using that argument, but that is something you could say. Also, he did collect a lot of RBI, and that's because he hit 300 lifetime with runners in scoring position. Also being a guy that could hit for power as well. Kind of an all-around hitter. It's just unfortunate, I think. Didn't have like the amazing defense, but also as a second baseman, all-time leader in home runs among second basemen.
377.
377 home runs. He was close to the 400 home run club, but didn't get there. But at his position, no one was able to hit home runs like him. And if you get into the deeper stuff, there are 93 other retired players with 60+ offensive WAR, like Jeff Kent has. 93 other retired players. 75 are Hall of Famers, and some of the non-Hall of Famers include Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Pete Rose, Manny Ramirez, Gary Sheffield, Adrian Beltre, Rafael Palmeiro, Carlos Beltran, Mark McGwire, and Shoeless Joe Jackson. All those guys are out because either they have yet to have a chance to be elected into the Hall of Fame, like Adrian Beltre or Carlos Beltran, or they have their own conflicts like PEDs for most of them. Shoeless Joe Jackson, took money to throw the World Series, and Pete Rose also bet on baseball. It was for his own team, but he's banned from baseball, so it would be weird to put him in the Hall of Fame, and he's not allowed to be on the Hall of Fame ballot as it is. And if you take all those guys out, that's 75 out of 83 players with 60+ offensive WAR who are Hall of Famers. And also there are only 12 other retired players with 350 plus home runs and 550 plus doubles. Those 12 players are Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, Carl Yastrzemski, Cal Ripken Jr., Adrian Beltre, Rafael Palmeiro, Carlos Beltran, Eddie Murray, Todd Helton, David Ortiz, and Luis Gonzalez. And I would say like only one of the guys is not only one of them is not really does not have produce like Hall of Fame worthy statistics, and that's Luis Gonzalez. And Jeff Kent actually has more B WAR and F WAR than Luis Gonzalez. Also, there are 18 other retired players with exactly 8 seasons of 100 plus RBI. So this isn't really a minimal thing. It's guys with exactly 8 seasons with 100 plus RBI. 11 of those players are Hall of Famers, and some of the 7 that are not Hall of Famers, that includes Carlos Beltran and Gary Sheffield. Beltran has not been on the ballot. Sheffield is not being let in because of PED use. And also Jeff Kent not on any PED lists, I believe. So I don't think that's being held against him. Also, there are 41 other retired players with 350 plus home runs and 1,500 plus RBI. So 41 other retired players, 30 of them are Hall of Famers. The other 11 are Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro, Manny Ramirez, David Ortiz, Gary Sheffield, Fred McGriff, Adrian Beltre, Carlos Delgado, and Carlos Beltran. Only like Delgado and McGriff were guys that were let off not because of either PEDs or they haven't been on the ballot yet. And the last stat to compare Kent to some of the greats, 40 other retired players. There are 40 other retired players with 350 plus home runs and 2,400 plus hits. 26 of them are Hall of Famers, and the other 14 are Bonds, Rodriguez, Beltre, Palmeiro, Beltran, Ramirez, Dwight Evans, Todd Helton, Gary Sheffield, Sammy Sosa, David Ortiz, Fred McGriff, Luis Gonzalez, and Torrey Hunter, who's on the ballot. But yeah, that's kind of who he compares with. There is an argument with, him being with, some of those names and a lot of other names, but I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for me to put him ahead of a lot of other guys.
Yeah.
But we definitely had to acknowledge it because he got a rise from like 10%. He got like a 10% rise like last year, I think.
Yeah, he had a big gain. A lot of people did too, but this is weird because you obviously see those names, and a lot of them are very reoccurring. Guys like Sheffield, guys like Beltran, Manny Ortiz. A lot of them were mentioned a lot of times. Luis Gonzalez, and in a lot of those statistics, Chris, it was mentioned that like there are 11 of these 17, 18 players are Hall of Famers, and then some of the non-Hall of Famers include these people, but there was a gray area of players that weren't even arguable. And I feel like that's kind of where Jeff Kent falls. Not to say that he's not arguable, but I mean, I really don't see him at the same level as guys like Beltran and Sheffield and Delgado even.
Yeah, I think, Jeff Kent for me, he's kind of the quintessential Hall of Very Good type
Mm-hmm.
player. You know, where like if you like upped his OPS plus by like 7 for every single season of his career, it would be like, hey, this guy like
That feels like too much to ask though, because
yeah,
he's not at a very power premier position. I mean, I would just say like up his defense, and if we're looking at a slightly above average defensive player, like then you're probably adding on a couple wins, and then I think we're talking.
yeah, potentially. But the defense does play a factor
I think
there.
he did everything he could have done on offense, especially at second base, like I've mentioned before. The defense is kind of the killer for me.
Yeah, because most, like mentioned before, most Hall of Fame second basemen have a defensive edge.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, where we stand on him, we're probably leaning towards no on Jeff Kent. I think he's yeah, pretty much quintessential Hall of Very Good type player. It's just he didn't really have a peak. There wasn't really a stretch of time where he there wasn't really a stretch of time where like, oh, he's like a top five player. Cause like even if you win MVP, it's like, all right, he had one good season. Let's see what else he's got. We didn't really have that
No, he did have
in
two
Jeff
seven
Kent.
win seasons, I believe, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah,
other than that, it was like those two very good years. And then it kind of a drop off. He did, although one thing I will say, he did win an MVP on a team that Barry Bonds was on during his peak.
that
That
is
is like it was the year before he started his just rampage on the entire league.
yeah, that is true. And one thing I will say also is if Jeff Kent could have like compiled, if he got to, one of those guys with like 12,000 plate appearances and, got 400 plus home runs and was around like, I don't know, 2,800 hits and probably his wins above replacement would be around like 65 or something like that. If there might have been a case there, even though he didn't really have a crazy peak, but he got his career got cut short before 10,000 plate appearances.
Yeah,
So I'm not going to be you know trying to make a huge case for Jeff Kent.
exactly.
But yeah, that's Jeff Kent. Now we're gonna get into the baseball reference front page.